MTN, the Montana Television Network. This is Face the State.
Good morning. I'm David Parker, MTN Political Analyst with Mike Dennison, MTN's Chief Political Correspondent, and this is Face the State. 2016 means politics and elections. With the change of the calendar, Face the State is taking on a new look and a new mission. We want to be the go-to source for Montana political news. What does that mean? Every other week, Mike and I will be here talking politics with Montana's political insiders and policymakers. And once the election heats up, we'll air our political show every week. You'll find us Sunday at 6:30 a.m. and many other weeks at 9:30 a.m. And each and every episode will be uploaded to a Face the State YouTube channel. No matter your schedule, it'll be easy to keep up with Montana politics. So watch us Sundays, live or online later. Catch up with us on Mike's Political Reporting on MTN stations, websites, or Facebook, or follow us on Twitter. You want Montana politics? MTN has you covered. Today we're doing a political roundtable, and we're joined by two guests. First, to my left, Aaron Murphy, a consultant with Hilltop Public Solutions, and further to my left, we have Matthew Monforton, representative for House District 69 here in Gallatin Valley, and the creator of the blog Republican Uprising, republicanuprising.com. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Dave.
So, 2016, what's going to happen in this cycle? Let's talk 30,000 feet up.
Well, I think it's going to be one very exciting next 10 months. The clock is ticking pretty quickly on us. I think a lot of the attention will be focused on the governor's race, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that in a bit. But I think we'll have a very strong candidate in Steve Bullock running against a billionaire, Greg Gianforte, from here in Bozeman. And it's going to be very exciting. I think you'll see a lot of outside money coming in for Mr. Gianforte. And as in years past, in 14 and in 12, it's going to try to influence the race. And it'll be exciting to see how that plays out and how we'll watch Montana values prevail.
Actually, Governor Bullock has been much more effective in raising dark money and outside money than any of our candidates. And the nice thing about Greg Gianforte, assuming that he runs, is that he's not going to have to raise any outside money. He's not going to be beholden to any special interests. He's someone who's able to raise his own money here in Montana with small donors, and of course he has his own money if he needs it. So I think we're going to be in for an exciting race, and I think we're going to hear a Montana message from Greg Gianforte. We may not necessarily hear that from Governor Bullock.
Let's talk a little more about the governor's race. Now, the conventional wisdom is that Governor Bullock is the favorite going in. He came out of the last legislature with some accomplishments. He didn't really mess up too badly. However, he only won with 49% of the vote last time. He doesn't have John Tester at the top of the ticket, and Democrats seem to be kind of saying out there, vote for us because we're not Republicans. I don't really hear a strong message. How do you see Governor Bullock going into those wins, if they are wins, in your mind?
Well, I do see a strong message. I see a strong message in fiscal responsibility. Remember that this governor has passed a balanced budget with bipartisan support. He has worked closely with both parties, by the way, to make some pretty positive steps forward in creating jobs in this state through his Main Street Montana initiative. There's been a lot of exciting things that we've been watching from our perspective, fighting back against public lands, for example, the effort to either sell off public lands to the highest bidder or to transfer the management of those to states like Montana, which can't afford fighting things like wildfires every summer. So the message, in addition to the fiscal responsibility, is just the ability to get things done in Helena and across the state. That's what we are watching, and I think Mr. Gianforte is going to have a difficult time trying to run on a message of Montana is not doing so well. That is not true. We are optimistic about the future. We have a strong economy in this state, and it is thanks to the governor and his leadership.
Why is Gianforte a good candidate for the Republicans?
Well, unfortunately, Montana ranks 49th in wages right now, and that's something that Greg Gianforte is going to be able to address in a way that Governor Bullock hasn't been able to. Greg Gianforte is Montana's equivalent of Steve Jobs without the drama. Someone who has started a business in his garage in Bozeman, literally from scratch, and within 10 years turned it into a $1.5 billion corporation. That's an incredible story that I think a lot of Montanans are going to want to hear. and they're going to want to hear what he has to say about creating good-paying jobs in Montana rather than the situation we have now where we're 49th in the nation in terms of wages, right above Mississippi. That's not much of a record for the governor to run on.
But here is a record. We are #1 in entrepreneurial activity in this state. We are #1 for the most fair tax system in this state. We're #3 for the best place to be a taxpayer. We're 4th for export growth. We're 5th for lowest cost of doing business. We're 6th for long-term job growth, 6th for business climate, and 7th per capita income growth. That's a pretty good record. So you latch onto one thing, and that thing is improving, by the way, along with graduation rates, et cetera. But the economy is doing strong, and so we can't sit back and listen to this message of one particular fact trying to slow things down.
Well, wages are a very big factor for most people, which unfortunately Governor Bullock doesn't seem to appreciate. So I think you shouldn't try to minimize that.
I'd like to ask something you said, Matthew, about Mr. Gianforte. He is a great success story, you know, his personal story about his business that he started here in Bozeman. But when I hear him talking about issues, I hear him saying just the same things we've been hearing from Republicans for the last 20 years. We need to cut taxes, we need to cut regulation. I mean, that's been going on for years. So what's new?
That kind of talk has been going on for years, but it hasn't actually happened. The legislature passed several good tax cuts, which were vetoed by Governor Bullock. So we're going to keep hearing it because those are good policies for Montana.
But what taxes have gone up in the last 20 years, and what things have really happened that you say you don't want to happen, they're going to make the state go? I mean, it's the same message we've been hearing from Republicans for the past 2 decades, and it has occurred, and we're still 49th.
Well, no, the problem is it hasn't occurred. We have a business equipment tax that is harming businesses in Montana, something that our surrounding states don't have. The surrounding states have significant advantages in terms of starting up businesses. That's something that Greg's going to be able to speak to, among many other things.
But let's talk about, you know, Aaron, for example, obviously going into this cycle, you want to talk a lot about the economic record and how Bullock is done, and the economic record seems to be good, but we have some clouds on the horizon, right? China's going crazy. That's going to be a problem for export markets. We're getting a stronger dollar, bad for export markets, and on top of that, oil production and oil prices are going down. Great for me who's driving to Kalispell, but bad for eastern Montana. What's Bullock got ready to fix those potential problems?
Well, first of all, he has a remarkable ability to bring people together, to listen to concerns from both sides of the aisle, and to use that input to create good policy in order to attract businesses here. This particular valley is growing very well. Large chunks of Montana are. There are places in Montana where we need to improve the economy, of course. That's a trouble that every state deals with. But Governor Bullock brings with him an ability to get things done. There was a headline when the legislature ended that Bullock came out a winner. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because of careful work with both sides of the aisle to create a very strong business climate, which was reflected in the numbers I read.
Give me one accomplishment that he can say that I did this and this is why the economy is better.
The Main Street Montana initiative is a very good one. And just earlier this past week, he created a brand new a portal. It's basically a checklist for any business who is looking to start up, or an entrepreneur coming into this state to launch and figure out the paperwork to get things done in order to cut the red tape to get the business up and running. So there's two.
Let's talk about another issue that hasn't fully played itself out yet, and that is this whole lieutenant governor fiasco. One of the interesting things that we learned in the last few weeks is that former Lieutenant Governor Angela McClain was seriously contemplating a primary challenge against Governor Bullock. This is rather extraordinary for a lieutenant governor, and especially a lieutenant governor who was appointed by Governor Bullock. And it makes us wonder, what is it about Governor Bullock that Angela McClain saw that is so problematic that the rest of us haven't seen? Where we are going to, that issue is going to play itself out some more.
I guess I would ask the reporters in the room if that's something that you've heard from Angela McClain, because I haven't heard that.
I have not heard that from Angela McClain, but I've heard it from others. I mean, I don't think that's a false statement, but I guess I would ask you this. As far as lieutenant governor, I mean, do voters really care about the lieutenant governor, who it is or what happened with the lieutenant governor? I'm just not sure that really plays out that much there in the hinterland.
They do when it becomes problematic. This is a direct reflection of Governor Bullock's leadership. We've had a failed selection with the first lieutenant governor, failed selection with the second lieutenant governor. People are going to start to wonder about that.
I'd also like to go back to something that you said in response to what David said about naming an accomplishment. I'd like you to name me or maybe tell me what's going to be something on the agenda for Governor Bullock or the Democrats to say, here's what we're going to do, here's an initiative we're going to take, here's what we're going to accomplish. I really haven't heard that yet.
Well, let's look at, for example, the Clean Power Plan, something that has, I know the other side of the aisle has been very loud about. It's something that is a concern for Steve Bullock, and so look at the way he approached that. Rather than just implementing a plan from on high in Washington, he said, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to create a plan to manage this from a Montana perspective, and brought together a bunch of people, 26 of them, many of them from the other side of the aisle, from industry, from conservationists, from labor, et cetera. That is a very positive step in my mind, because what it does is make sure that as we implement this plan the Montana way, we do it with perspective from everybody in a way that will strengthen our economy.
We're not implementing a Montana plan. We are caving into EPA regulations that are going to cost 7,000 good-paying Montana coal jobs. That's what the U of M is telling us. And for whatever reason, Governor Bullock is not standing up for these jobs. He's leaving it to other governors in other states to bring a court challenge. And I think coal workers in this state, especially ones that are about to lose their job, are not going to forget that.
But how is Gianforte, though, really honestly going to beat Steve Bullock? I mean, you look at the data very clearly. Incumbent governors win about 85% of the time. The numbers in terms of the economy are solid. He's got reasonably strong approval ratings. How is a person who's never run for office before at all actually going to be an incumbent governor who also was chairman of the DGA? I mean, isn't this like a really steep climb here? Being
an incumbent in this election cycle is not necessarily a strength, as we're seeing at least at the national level, and I think that's going to apply at the state level too. Again, we have a system where we are 49th in wages. People are struggling to make it in Montana in ways that they aren't in other states, in ways that they shouldn't be. And that's something that Greg is going to be able to talk about that, quite frankly, Governor Bullock is not.
All right, well, let me ask you this. All right, you alluded to another point that I wanted to make. 2016 presidential election cycle. Add to all of that, this is good for cycle for Democrats because their voters show up. Republican voters tend to get drowned out in presidential election year. So again, what is the strategy that's going to be, hey, win this race when this is really a target-rich environment for Democrats?
Normally it would be, but there's some problems on the horizon for Democrats. We look at President Obama's executive order, what amounts to a gun-grabbing executive order, that he's going to have to answer for. The legislature passed HB 203 last year, which would have prevented state authorities from being commandeered by federal authorities to enforce these unconstitutional gun rules. Unfortunately, Governor Bullock vetoed that bill. And now he's going to have to answer for the fact that state authorities are going to be commandeered by federal authorities to enforce these unconstitutional gun laws. It's something that Republicans are obviously going to be upset about, but not just Republicans, many independents and I think even some Democrats. Montana Democrats are not California Democrats and not New York Democrats. They value their right to keep and bear arms.
That's correct, which is why they elect leaders who support the Second Amendment and fight for responsible gun ownership. And every time the people on the other side of the aisle try to compare a local race to the presidency and Obama, I scratch my head. The people that I play poker with scratch my head because I don't understand the connection between trying to look at Obama and his record and translate it to Steve Bullock and his record. They tried to do that in 2012, Matt, and it didn't work very well.
Well, let me explain the problem that you're going to have this time around, is that President Obama has stopped Keystone, which is costing hundreds, maybe thousands of Montana jobs. His EPA has imposed enormous regulations on the Montana coal industry. That's going to cost thousands of jobs. Unfortunately, Bullock is going to be tied to this albatross that Washington Democrats
and I want to go back to
putting on him.
your Clean Power Plan number because you said 7,000 jobs. That was not necessarily the U of M, it was the Bureau of Business and Economic Research, which is housed under UM, but a lot of people sort of laugh at that, and it also presumed a scenario where Colstrip would shut down. That is not the case. That is not the case. I think what we need to be focusing on is the fact that the outdoor recreation economy is an industry that has generated 70,000 Montana jobs, direct jobs, by the way. It pumps in
Most of them minimum wage jobs.
$6 billion into our economy every year. That's the sort of thing that we should be talking about. It's a major industry for Montana. I don't see Mr. Gianforte talking about how we can prop up our outdoor recreation industry and the clean air.
Well, he's talking about high-tech jobs that actually pay living wages as opposed to minimum wage jobs, which unfortunately is what a lot of the tourism industry is.
The people I play poker with, though, Matt, aren't high techies. They're just looking for a great place to work, live, and raise a family. It's great that we can talk about those jobs, but we're talking about a small slice of Montana's economy.
Mike, you've got some reporting on the coal problem here in the state. I mean, the issue is less the EPA regulations potentially, and more the demand of coal is dropping because of the regulators.
That's right.
Right?
You know, it's quite possible that you know, we can't force people to buy coal power if they don't want to buy it, and I think that'll have some effect. But I want to go back to one thing you were just talking about here about the nationalizing the election and talking about other issues. I mean, that's going to happen. You know that's going to happen. You know that's going to happen, and I'm thinking the same thing he's thinking on a lot of these, that it may be not a good thing for Democrats. We have immigration, national security, maybe Hillary Clinton at the top of the ticket who's not popular in Montana. I'm wondering if Democrats should be a little bit worried about these forces outside the state politically that may not be good for their party this time around.
Well, it was the same thing in 2012, Mike, when John Tester was running and Barack Obama was running. And the strategy from the Republicans was to try to, I mean, there were ads comparing John Tester being a twin to Barack Obama. It was laughable. Is it going to be a concern this year? Absolutely. That's because there are huge forces at work, dark outside money coming in to this race. You will see them. That will try to influence voters. And there's a reason that you probably won't see Hillary Clinton, if she gets the nomination, or Donald Trump campaigning in Montana. So we'll be talking about the Montana issues. And the Montana issues are what I just talked about. Outdoor recreation, clean air. The high-tech sector is certainly one of them. Public education, goes on and on and on.
Do you have a preferred candidate at the top of the ticket that you think would be better and play here in Montana in terms of for the presidency?
My preference is Ted Cruz. I think he's going to be a strong candidate. I think he's got a good chance of winning the nomination, and I think he's going to be able to explain conservative values not only to Republicans who already believe in them, but independents and even some Democrats. So we're excited about that prospect. I don't think the Donald Trump phenomenon is going to last too much longer, although people have been saying that for several months now and have been proven wrong, but I think he's reached his limit.
Well, political science says that Donald Trump's probably going to fizz out, but you know, who knows? I mean, the world can shift dramatically. Are you comfortable running campaigns in this election cycle with Clinton or Sanders? Is one better than the other, or is it really both are toxic?
Well, to be clear, I'm not running any campaigns this cycle, but I think it's certainly an issue that the dark outside special interest money will try to tell that story. Mr. Gianforte and his team will certainly be leading that charge, trying to convince everybody that Steve Bullock is a twin of whomever the Democratic nominee is. I can't guess on who will win that nomination, but either way, you will see this race from our side being run from a Montana perspective with Montanans on Montana values.
Gianforte is not going to need dark money. He's got his own money and he's got his own small contributors in Montana. The dark money that's going to come into the state this election cycle is going to be on behalf of Governor Bullock.
Remember his latest finance report, he is tied with the Bopp Law Firm. The Bopp Law Firm was an instrumental law firm in the case of Citizens United, something that Steve Bullock is very much against.
I think so far, though, I don't really think we've seen any dark money at all yet. There's some corporate money that's been given to the DGA and the RGA, but as far as dark money, we really don't know if that's going to happen, and it hasn't happened yet. Let's talk about something I haven't talked about, another race in the state besides the governor, and that's the U.S. House race between Denise Juneau, the Democrat, and Ryan Zinke, the current congressman. It seems like everyone talks about governor, no one talks about this race. Is that because no one takes this race seriously, that Zinke's the overwhelming favorite?
Yeah,
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'd be curious on your perspective, Matt, on Congressman Zinke's recent vote for the big spending bill in Washington, $680 billion in the hole, something that both John Tester and Steve Daines voted against. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it brings up an interesting point about what's going to happen with this election with Ryan Zinke. And the question is, I think the big question is Ryan Zinke going to get coxed by Denise Juneau? And by that I mean Dan Cox, of course. What happened in 2012 was that Dan Cox was the Libertarian nominee, at the very end, and I don't know if it was Hilltop that was smart enough to think of this, but at the very end of that election, there was a bunch of money spent by Democrat organizations for Dan Cox, bumped him up to 7% of the vote. I suspect what we're going to see with Denise Juneau, if she's running close in September or October, we're going to see a repeat of that. And unfortunately for Ryan Zinke, that's going to create some problems because he's got some problematic votes that conservatives in Montana are not happy about.
Well, Matt, you need to read my book. Dan Cox was not the factor there that everyone says he was. Certainly that race still would have been won with Dan Cox
Maybe, but it was still a brilliant
I've got
ploy by the other side. I'll give him
evidence
credit.
to suggest that the reason why you had older Republican women that basically voted for John Tester, but putting that aside for a moment, right? Zinke, certainly, you talk about real Republicans versus liberal Republicans, and in many ways, Ryan Zinke is kind of to the left of his party, at least according to the analyses I've seen and I've done with voting records. Do you think there's a possibility that he could get challenged in the primary? And if so, who?
I think it's certainly possible, and I don't have any names, but unfortunately with his voting record, he's created that opening. He's told the CSKT that he is in favor of the water compact. That is deeply unpopular with Republicans. He just voted for the continuing resolution a few weeks ago that funds Planned Parenthood's baby butchering shops, that funds Islamist refugees, I use in quotes. These are votes that are not going to be popular with Republicans, and it creates an opening for some Republican if they want to challenge him.
And what about Denise Juneau? You talked about, we've talked about outside money. Denise Juneau is maybe one of the only Native Americans running for a statewide office in the country. Is she going to attract outside money to help her make this race viable?
You know, I don't have a read on outside money. I will tell you that this is the 100th anniversary of Jeanette Rankin's election to the U.S. House. And,
a Republican, by the way.
A Republican, correct. And 100 years ago, they looked a lot different than they do today. But she is going into this race with a very good perspective, having been elected statewide twice, very popularly. She has a record of getting things done. She has a record, like Steve Bullock, of listening to folks. What kind of support that attracts from out of state, I don't have a read on, but I can tell you in state, a lot of us are watching that race with excitement.
You did say she won twice, but the second time, as you know, is very, very close.
One thing about that race that really interests me, a couple things, is that I think about Denise Juneau being the first Native American woman to win statewide office here. That could actually attract some national attention. And I think very similarly to Tammy Baldwin in 1998 when she ran for that House race in Wisconsin, first openly lesbian woman running for office, and that attracted a ton of national attention. So I can imagine there's a possibility there. But here's the thing, Ryan Zinke, $4.7 million in his first race. This man raises money like crazy. And Denise had a great quarter. I mean, a barn-burning quarter by Democratic standards, but I don't know. I think she's going to get buried by money. What's going to happen?
That's a really good question. I'm sure a lot of special interest money is going to come into that race from Congressman Zinke's camp, as it did last cycle. It was tough to see.
I think we have a tendency to overrate money, especially in this cycle. Jeb Bush and his super PAC have raised maybe $120, $150 million total. He's at 3%. So money is important, but it may not be the most important thing. The most important thing, I think, in a lot of races nowadays is to motivate your base, to get your people to the polls. I'm not entirely sure that Ryan Zinke is going to be able to do that.
All right, so moving on, Mike.
Oh, you know, we talked about statewide races a lot. Let's talk a little about legislative races, which I think actually kind of affect things more than a lot of these statewide races or national races that we talk about a lot. I don't hear any Democrats saying that they're going to take over the legislature. They might close it up in the House a little bit, Senate about the same, maybe lose a seat. What's your take on that as far as the numbers there?
You know, I think it will be certainly something that we'll all be watching. What we are excited about is the fact that if you look at the ticket from every district, in 2014, every single seat had a Democrat running in it. Our caucus is made up of 50% women. On the other side of the aisle, it's 14%. Our caucus has 7 Native Americans. The other side has 1. We believe that our side is reflective of Montana and its values, and that is something that I think is a stark contrast.
Although the numbers that matter are 29-21 in the Senate Republicans and 59-41 in the House Republicans. Do you think that's going to change that much this election?
No, well, Republicans are going to hold the House, they're going to hold the Senate. The interesting question is going to be what kind of Republicans show up in the legislature, and that's going to be an interesting situation, just like it was in past 2 election cycles.
And how do you mean? Is it just the difference between the ones who work with the other side versus the
You mean the liberal Republicans, the ones that don't follow the platform versus those of us that take the platform seriously, take our campaign promises seriously? Yes, that's the divide, exactly.
Well, what are the chances here? I mean, we know here in the county, right, we've got at least 2 primary challenges going on in 2 of the House races here. How many of these are we going to be seeing around the state at this point?
I think we're going to see at least 10 or 12.
10 or 12?
Yeah,
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. We know that incumbents win, usually, and they certainly win in primary races. What's the chances here that any of them are really going to seriously be able to take somebody like Art Whittick out or somebody like Burnett or any of these other more conservative Republicans? I mean, what are the chances?
What they're forcing us to do is, and I say by us, real Republicans, what they're forcing us to do is spend money defending certain seats so that it leaves other seats more vulnerable. That's part of the strategy.
Ah, okay.
Now what happens to this dynamic we've had in the last 2 sessions where we had moderate or liberal Republicans, or whatever we want to call them, teaming up with Democrats to pass kind of a modified version of Governor Bullock's agenda? If we have a Republican governor next time around, what happens to this coalition? Is it still there? Is it still driving the bus? Or does it change things?
What's going to happen is they're going to start, the liberal Republicans will start caucusing, if not officially, unofficially with Democrats, and probably trying to extract promises from Greg Gianforte. That's my concern.
Well, I would certainly worry that I would worry about that scenario, and I think it's unfortunate that, for example, the infrastructure bill failed despite some pretty key support from, I think, the Republicans that Matt is talking about. Is that kind of thinking that we're going to need in this state in order to create an environment that's conducive to jobs and to keep us at our #1 in entrepreneurship spot?
We're getting toward the end, so let me ask you a couple other questions quickly. So if you had to guess, do you think the Democrats are going to pick up seats in the Senate and the House, and so how many?
If I were a games maker, I'd live in Las Vegas. So I don't know for sure in the House. I think the House is looking very solid. The Senate, we have some challenges, and we're prepared to go into the battle.
I think the numbers are going to stay probably
About
the same. The question again is which kind of Republicans are going to show up for the session. That's going to be a big factor. That's a big question mark. And of course, who the governor is that's going to show up. That's going to be an even bigger factor.
Do you have a beat on this? Do you have a guess?
Yeah, I think in the Senate right now it's 29-21 for Republicans. I think it's 30-20, that's my guess. Maybe 31-19. I think Republicans will pick up 1 or 2. In the House, I think Democrats are probably going to pick up seats. They say as many as 5 to 8. I don't know what's going to happen. Depends on the turnout and the other factors involved. It could be 2, 3, 4. I just don't. In that range.
I think the Senate's going to be a wash. I didn't see many seats that the Democrats could pick up. I mean, I'm looking at the presidential votes. There's much more, I think, possibility for movement over in the House. Okay, this is the last question. You just give me a name. We haven't talked about the other statewide races. Give me your favorite Democratic candidate running statewide, besides governor.
Besides governor?
Yeah.
So I can say Denise Juneau.
Did you say Denise Juneau?
Yeah, you can.
Corey Stapleton.
Corey Stapleton.
Yes.
Mike.
Running statewide,
Yeah.
Jesse Laszlo is running for state auditor for a Democrat. Because it's someone to watch.
And I think Elsie Arntzen is a great candidate running for superintendent of education. So, well, thank you all for joining us on the panel. Thank you at home for joining us on Face the State, and join us next time.
You've been watching Face the State, a presentation of MTN, the Montana Television Network.